Donnie and Dolly, the team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
Okay, it is, thanks for that warning there, Ryan. Appreciate that. It is Friday, and today's guest, including Thomas Drance, standing by. Brought to you by Langley Chrysler. Don't miss the game because your car needs servicing. Langley Chrysler will pick up, service, and drop off your car so you don't have to miss the action. Valet service only at langleychrysler.com. As we're joined now in the wake of a 5-4 Canucks victory over the Sharks down in San Jose in overtime, Thomas Drance from The Athletic. How are you, sir?
Gentlemen, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. An interesting one last night. The rare buzzer beater in a hockey game. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the end anyway. Yeah. I didn't think the game itself was as good as the scoreline suggested, though.
What do you make of the last two games that the Canucks have played where they weren't anywhere near their best, whatever their best is, but they came away with 4 points?
Yeah, they're going to need to play better if they're going to sustain the results. If they're going to sustain winning, right? It needs to look a lot different than it did the last two games. But I think they know that, right? I mean, Bruce Boudreau commented post-game and said the thing that really bothered him was the lack of composure in the second period. And I think that's dead on, especially when you look at the goal that got San Jose on the board. Canucks sort of all over them. It's a bad change. It's a low percentage shot. It was just not a dialed-in team. It was almost a team that thought the rest of the game was going to be easy, which, fair enough based on how the first period looked. But obviously it wasn't. The Sharks kept coming. They ended up taking them to overtime. And, that does matter. I mean, if you're in the camp that thinks this team can push for the playoffs, and I think your viewers know that I'm not among those people, but if you are in that camp, you need regulation wins. That's the first tiebreaker, right? The Canucks are 0.6 seconds from getting one. If this team goes on the type of run that people are hoping, that management is hoping, that this market is hoping for, they could miss the playoffs by 0.6 seconds. Like, that's a realistic possibility with how bunched up the West is. So, they won, but they're not performing well enough. And I think actually to sort of widen the lens, I think this is an interesting moment too, to reflect on, the Canucks had 25 games under Travis Green where they won, 37% of the points that were available to them in the first 25. Under Bruce Boudreau, that number has gone up to 68%, right? But when you look at last night's game, when you look at this team's form of late, and the last two periods almost reminded me, remember that Flames game, the loss they had to the Flames before the All-Star break, where they had like 12 shots in the whole game? Mm-hmm. The last two periods kind of felt like that team, to me anyway. And that's just not going to get it done. I think when you look at this team's overall form, right? Like the power play looks like it's going backwards. The penalty kill is better, but it's still not nearly good enough. 5-on-5, the team's still not generating a ton of offense. Like, as much as people want to believe that this team is fixed, and I think Boudreau's done a phenomenal job in his 25 games here, and I don't want to take anything away from that. There's a lot of things that still look the same to me, with just sort of better fortune and better goaltending in the 25 games that Boudreau has coached. I mean, I think you can bet the under pretty safely on the club having a 68% point percentage over the balance of this campaign. And where does that leave you? Probably in the high 80s for point totals and well out of the playoff picture.
Yeah. Thomas, how, and I know we've beaten this to death, but how would it make sense, given what we saw last night and, most of this season and certainly most of the time he's been here, how the heck does it make sense for the Canucks to trade JT Miller?
Well, he's a very, very good player, right? I mean, there's no question about that. He's a very, very good player. He comes up big in big moments. I think there's a lot to like about the way he conducts himself, the way he does his business, the way he goes about having success in the NHL. I want to note, though, right, that we've in this market spent weeks, it feels like, talking about every Rangers prospect under the sun, right? Yeah, and there's 7 or 8 good ones. There's 7 or 8 good ones. Well, 4 years ago and 7 days, 4 years and 7 days ago, the Rangers sent the infamous Jeff Gorton letter, right? Where they pulled the plug on a team that was far closer, by the way, to a playoff spot than the Canucks are now, right? And decided to reload and traded a ton of pieces away, in deals that sort of protected or procured their future. And 4 years later, granted they won 2 draft lotteries, though I don't think you'd say the Rangers are in the playoff mix or the team they are right now because of the contributions of Capco and Alexis Lafreniere, right? Like those are sort of supportive bit players on this current Rangers team. But the arsenal of players that they were able to acquire as a result of being focused about the big picture just 4 years later have, this market salivating over them as a team to make a deal with in the event that JT Miller is dealt, right? And that's sort of, as I sit here and think through how this team gets better, like that's what I want for Canucks fans. I don't want to be the team. I don't want to cover the team or talk about the team that's, grinding for a small or a short-term win, like a playoff run that, is still 90% unlikely. You want to be the team that's already in a playoff spot and also has 8 really good young players. The Rangers accomplished that. They showed the model of what can be accomplished if you're willing to trade pieces when they're at their high ebb in terms of value and be focused on the big picture. That's proof positive right there. And for me anyway, when I sort of think through this, I think it's kind of ironic that on the one hand, we're talking about, playoffs and keeping this team together. And then on the other, also salivating over the fruits of the Rangers' labor, which sort of started when they took the opposite tack. It's an interesting space for this team to be in, but there's no question. If you trade JT Miller, you don't have JT Miller anymore. And that makes this team worse in the short term.
Thomas, I think we can all agree that they're getting calls on Boeser. I think we all know that. But you can't move him until you talk to his agent about an extension and find out what kind of contract he wants on a new deal. Do you see a scenario where they work out a contract with Brock and say, for 4 or 5 years, or how do you see this thing playing out?
I think the Brock Boeser contract situation needs to be understood in a very specific type of light, right? The $7.5 million qualifying offer doesn't mean that his next contract has to start at $7.5 million if you can get an extension done. However, Rick, when you have a $7.5 million qualifying offer looming, right? Yeah. What's your incentive, whether it's with the Canucks or with a potential trade partner team, to do a deal early? You've got a lot of time, use it. If you're in Brock Boeser's camp, if you are Brock Boeser, right? Because fundamentally, what teams are staring down the barrel of is 3 options. Take me to arbitration, in which case, this relationship's not going to go anywhere good, right? Qualify me, in which case I can just accept $7.5 million for next season, which is probably more than you're offering me, right? Yeah. Or don't qualify me and I'm a UFA and I become the top UFA on the market at the age of 24. Yep. Right? Like, what's the incentive to do a deal early? You have to be able to empathize with people, right? And careers are short. The people in this league, they play 10 years if they're very, very fortunate. Injuries happen. Players take on a good deal of risk. You have to look after your family, gentlemen. We all know this. So, I do think that the idea of a sweetheart deal coming before the deadline, whether it's with the Canucks or with another team, it just seems to be based on a fundamental misunderstanding of the leverage points that are at play in this situation. And that's partly what makes it so fascinating and partly what keeps it on the tip of the tongue in this market and potentially around other markets in this league, like in league circles. It's an interesting topic to unpack, but I just don't understand why you do a deal early at all if you're Boeser or his representation with Octagon Hockey.
And quickly, Thomas, Patrick Alvin and Jim Rutherford are making the media rounds lately. Patrick is going to join us just after 11 o'clock on this show. Do you have any sense of their opinion of this Canuck roster?
Well, I think that Jim Rutherford's comments on Halford and Brough. Am I allowed to say that, or does that get Rick in trouble, Donnie? You'll have to.
Well, Rick's on their show on a regular basis. So
stop. Go on.
I hear he goes on there in the morning and Raisin Bran gives them 2 scoops.
Yes,
2 scoops in the morning.
3.
Thomas, these guys drove me nuts yesterday. Don't do this, Thomas. It was 5 in the morning. You and I are good friends. Stop it.
Yeah, no, I know. Well, you love your Raisin Bran, man. 2 scoops to start your day on a program that's not your own.
Yeah, that he doesn't get paid by.
Go.
Sorry, what were we talking about, Rick? No,
Opinion. Alvin's opinion of the roster in Rutherford's. Yeah.
I thought that Rutherford's commentary had some low-key scathing commentary. Mm-hmm. I felt like Rutherford honestly said a lot of the things that I've been saying about this team for the past month and a half. And every time I say them, people are like, the goalie's part of the team, Drancer. The goalie's part of the team. Or people will say things to me like, you're so negative. And then Jim Rutherford comes on and sort of, I felt like gave a pretty similar diagnosis to what I've been saying. And everyone's like, Jim Rutherford's right. which is, gratifying to me, to be totally honest with you. I think they have a really strong sense, to be honest with you, of some of the difficulty that they're going to have charting a future course for this organization. I think they've seen this team pretty close to its best since they took over. Jim Rutherford had the comment about the defense, for example, right? I think there's something, we can make something of this defense. And, wouldn't you think that if you've seen Tucker Poolman play 18 of his best games of his career and Tyler Myers played the 25 best games since he was a Calder winner over a decade ago? I mean, you'd think that if you'd watched the last 25 Canucks games where they've been one of the league's best, in terms of defensive results. So, I do think, though, that even if you like the defense, right, the one thing you'd have to note is this is the second most expensive defense in hockey. Yeah. And, we like what we're seeing, but we wish it didn't cost $29 million against the cap. I think they have a pretty good sense of their lack of flexibility, of the fact that they don't have a ton of prospects coming that they can count on at the moment, of the fact that they don't have their full arsenal of draft picks, of the fact that they are so limited cap space wise going forward. And so while I think their mileage on this roster may differ with some in this market to varying degrees, whether it's the defense that they maybe like a little bit more than some people do in this market, whether it's the overall team quality, which they might be a little more down on than some in this market are. I think the thing that they have a lot of clarity on and understand really well, and I think that's going to make for an interesting next 4.5 weeks leading up to the trade deadline, is they do understand how difficult this club is going to be to disassemble should they decide to begin to tweak it in dramatic ways with the future in mind.
Rick.
Ryan. Thomas.
Good start.
I don't know why I just called you Ryan.
Okay.
Thomas, a lot of people don't know this, but you have a singing background.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I lived in Miami for a while.
Yeah, look at this guy.
Yeah.
Look at this guy. Do you have shades like that?
I don't. I think those would make my head look too large, to be totally honest with you. I'm very particular about the shades I wear, Rick, because I've got the, size 8 1/3 ball cap.
I can relate to that.
So,
yeah.
By the way, please, gentlemen, as a favor to me, do not use this bit with Patrick Alvin.
We were actually going to use Alvin's photo.
Actually.
Oh, we have. Yeah, we have.
Yeah, you are. That's already happened.
It's not going to happen. Yeah.
Good. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate that. As a favor to me, I appreciate that. Save this bit for your good friend Thomas Drance, Mr. Worldwide over here.
Yeah.
There you go.
Pitbull.
Thank you, Thomas.
Have a nice day.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, gentlemen. Enjoy your weekend.